Welcome everyone to the API Wizard webinar. I'm Sarah Consemius with API Wizard, and I have my colleague with me, Rob Lepanto, joining me today for the session. Now, before we get started, I'd like to encourage everyone throughout the session to type any questions you have into the chat or question panel, and we'll try to address those in today's session, or we'll follow up with you after the session to make sure all your questions are answered. If after today's session you'd like to arrange for a more customized demo session with your company to focus on specific areas of interest, or would like to arrange for a free trial of API Wizard to test in your environment, please let me know. So with that, we'll get started. So API Wizard is an Excel-based productivity tool that helps users get data in and out of Oracle eBusiness Suite more efficiently and accurately. We have thousands of users around the world using API Wizard across the entire eBusiness Suite. But what we found is that with Oracle customers, Oracle doesn't always make it easy for users to get their data in and out of Oracle. And they certainly don't make it easy or efficient for IT to build the processes needed so that business gets their data entered in a timely and accurate manner. And ultimately, this can have a negative impact on the overall business if you're not getting your data entered in a timely manner and the business doesn't have access to the latest and greatest of your business data. So really, what are your options? Well, we found customers generally have deployed a patchwork of different solutions for different processes if they haven't come across API Wizard yet. For instance, they might be using the forms to enter their financial data. Maybe they've built a couple ADI templates, perhaps a data loader tool to load other manufacturing data, or maybe you've built some custom programs to expedite some of your processes. Now, this is a lot of tools for IT to maintain. They need to make sure these tools stay updated and compatible with Oracle every time there's a patch or an update applied. It's a lot of interfaces for users to learn, to keep all the PCs updated. So ultimately, this just kind of creates a lot of work for IT and a lot of upkeep, and then confusion and no real cohesion for the users for their data processing. There are also several caveats with some of these solutions. For instance, with Web ADI, this requires some IT or consulting resources to build out each ADI template, and you still need to have multiple ADI templates just for a simple process, as it doesn't allow you to call multiple APIs within one ADI template, or it doesn't support parent-child relationships. So that just creates another burden similar to using the forms, where the user ends up navigating through several different screens just to process a single record. So that can be very time consuming. And some customers have tried to use Data Loader as an alternative, and while it can be useful, they usually find themselves babysitting this process. They really need to babysit their PC while the data load is going on, make sure it doesn't crash or fall over. They really can't work on anything else while this load is going on, as it's very sensitive and has been known to fall over and put you at risk for data corruption, and then having to start the load all over again, clean up any errors or any bad data that may have gotten into the system, on top of spending hours just babysitting this process. Now, if you've created a custom program, that might be unique to your custom needs, requirements, but this puts a burden on IT, as I mentioned, to build this, maintain it, update it. Sometimes consultants have built it and they've since left, so you end up building the whole program again. So it would just be a lot easier if customers had a way to use an out-of-the-box product that was supported, so IT doesn't have to worry about compatibility nor training users on different tools, but it still gives users an easy and efficient way to process their data. And that's really where API Wizard comes in. API Wizard combines the power of Oracle and Excel to provide users with an easy-to-use Excel interface to process all of their data, whether it's new data entry, updates to existing or master data, or reporting. Users can use our Excel-based interface for all of their Oracle EBS data processing needs. Now, what's nice is that users can control the entire process themselves, all within Excel. Users can enter data either by copying and pasting or keying directly into the Excel template. Then API Wizard validates the data before it's uploaded to catch any errors in the data, report these errors back to Excel so the user can see what has erred out and why, and they can correct the errors themselves without needing IT assistance, which is normally what they would have to do. So they can either type the correction right into the field or select from a list of values that can be populated for them to choose from. For example, perhaps the error says supplier name invalid. The user can either retype the supplier name if they know the correct way it's spelled in the system, or you can search a list of values populated in that field and just select it the way it's already been created in Oracle. So ultimately, this saves both users a lot of time and IT a lot of time, and speeds up your data processing and ensures higher data accuracy. So what might take an hour to process 10 records using the Oracle Forms, you could upload thousands of records in a few minutes using API Wizard, because you can just copy and paste the data, validate it, correct it, all within Excel. You can also use API Wizard to extract existing data and make updates to this, which saves users from having to update each record one by one. Or you can, this works for existing data, price lists, things like that, or master data. Most customers have periodic annual tasks where they need to update their employees, their vendors, suppliers, that sort of thing. Or you can use API Wizard to extract and report on the data. You can build out charts and graphs, pivot tables. You can refresh for live data whenever needed. You can drill down to more levels of detail or drill to another report. And then over on the right, you'll see development. So API Wizard has a library of hundreds of pre-built loaders that you can choose from based on your needs. You can use our pre-built templates as is, or you can modify them to suit your preferences or incorporate any customizations or custom fields you may have. They're very flexible and designed to meet your specific requirements. But API Wizard also comes with a development platform that essentially allows you to use a point-and-click template builder without programming or coding. So if you did have a custom process or perhaps an area in Oracle where we haven't pre-built a process for, you still have the ability to create your own custom loaders and reports on the fly without, but without a lot of programming or development resources spent. So moving on to where we see our customers using API Wizard, transactional data, entering new data like new invoices, new orders, new POs, updating master data, as I mentioned, vendors, customers, items, employees, periodic tasks like price list updates, salary updates, budget updates, project tasks where you're upgrading to a new version, or you're rolling out new modules, or perhaps you've acquired a company and you need to bring on that company's assets and employees and inventory. Instead of having to do a big manual data conversion project, you can simply copy and paste that data from another CSV file into our loaders and have it uploaded into Oracle in a fraction of the time. You'll see a lot of consulting firms use this on their projects for data conversions, upgrading, helping with their setup data like flex field setups, user and responsibility setups, organization, location setups, that sort of thing. And then finally, reporting. So any area of eBusiness Suite, any business process or module, you can enter data and report on this data, all from our Excel-based tool. So it doesn't matter if it's financials, purchasing, projects, any area of Oracle eBusiness Suite. It's very easy to implement API Wizard and roll it out very quickly. It installs in less than an hour. We give you a running start with bundled pre-built Excel content. We can help you customize it if you need to modify it a little bit. And ultimately, you're just going to save, most of our customers have seen hundreds of hours saved very quickly. And it can just really transform your whole data processing and departmental processing needs. We are enforcing Oracle security rules, so no one's going to be able to access or update anything that they weren't given the responsibility to. So this gives IT assurance that security is intact, but it gives users control over their data processing needs. So it's really a win-win. Now I will pass this over to my colleague, Rob LaPonta. We're going to open up API Wizard and go through some examples live. If anyone has any questions, please, again, type them into the question panel. We'll try to answer those throughout the series session. And again, afterwards, if you would like a customized demo session or a free trial, please let us know. Okay, over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everybody. This is Rob LaPonta from API Wizard, and I will be performing the rest of the presentation today. In a moment, you should see my screen. Hopefully you see it now. All right, so we're going to dive right in. I do have a few slides that I'm going to use in tangent with showing you live API Wizard processing. So I'm going to just go right over to my first example. Just as a note before we dive into this first example, today's a general webinar, so we're going to be covering examples from a whole range of different modules. We'll have some examples in financials, we'll have some examples in manufacturing, we'll have some examples in human resources, we'll have some examples in enterprise asset management, just all over the board. So we're going to look at examples from each area, and then I'm going to also talk about the other things that you can do in a given area. So we're going to cover a lot of ground in today's session. And the objective of today's session is to introduce you to API Wizard, show you the breadth of what it can do, the ease of how it can improve your data processing. All right, so let's get started. What you're looking at right now is my first example for entering AP invoices. What you're looking at is what we call an API Wizard Loader. An API Wizard Loader is an Excel worksheet that's been configured to perform some type of Oracle EBS task. So this particular example is in the payables module, and it's for the AP invoice process. You'll see other examples, and the loaders will look similar, but they'll have different information and they'll be for different processes. All loaders have certain things in common. They all have input parameters. That's the information that we're going to send to Oracle. And they all have output parameters. That's the information that we get back from Oracle. For the example of invoices, the input information that we're going to send to Oracle are things like the invoice header, that's who the supplier is, the invoice number, the invoice date, the line information, and the distribution information. That then goes to Oracle. Oracle validates it and lets us know whether or not the data that we pass has successfully created the invoice. When you're working in API Wizard, we take the data that you prepare in the API Wizard Loader and we send it to what's called an Oracle integration point. That's an Oracle API or an Oracle Open Interface. These are created by Oracle expressly for the purpose of bringing in data from outside of the Oracle forms. So everything that you do in API Wizard goes through a standard Oracle EBS process. Oracle takes 100% responsibility for validating the data, ensuring that only good transactions are processed. If there's any data validation errors, then the Oracle will provide a message telling us what the issue was that gets presented to the user. So the user is able to right away know whether they've created their data. If there's any issues, they can easily fix it, and so forth. Let's take a quick look at this specific loader, and you'll see that AP invoices have a three-tier structure. There is the invoice header, and that's the information that you see here under the blue column headers. And that includes things like the supplier name, the supplier number, the site code, the invoice number, date, amount, currency. Then they have line information, and the line information can include things like purchase order numbers and purchase order line numbers, amount and line description. And then we also have the third tier, which is the distribution information, which we can either pass using a distribution account, we can leave blank and let Oracle default it, or we can use distribution set names. The output information is located to the very right of the loader, and you'll see here that under the green column headers, we have our output, including a status column. As the data is processed, we'll see either an S for success or an E for error in the status column, telling us whether Oracle was able to successfully validate the data. If there's any errors, then we'll see a message in the messages column telling us what the error was so that the user can go and fix it. Now, when you look at the data in my sheet, in the bottom section here, you'll notice that there are some blue lines, and those are just for cosmetic purposes for this webinar to show you the break between invoices. So in row 14 through 16, we have the supplier's Allied Manufacturing, and we're loading a 3-line invoice called Allied 50036. In rows 18 through 22, we're loading a 5-line invoice called Allied 50037. In rows 24 through 28, we're loading a 5-line invoice 65993345. And then in rows 30 through 38, we're loading an 8 or 9-line invoice CIC 4057. In API Wizard, you can load an infinite number, not really infinite, but as many invoices as you want, up to the number of rows that are available in Excel, which is a million these days, or a little bit over a million. You can enter invoices that have hundreds or thousands of lines. That's a very common use case for API Wizard customers to have, very large invoices, small invoices, lots of invoices, just a few invoices. Whatever your data volume and range is, API Wizard can handle it. I'll also note that there's some information in the header of API Wizard with the black background here. You'll see that we've got things like the AP invoice source. One of the things that I'll point out is that you'll see a lot of these little LOV symbols. What that means is that there is a list of values available. So if you don't know the value for a field, you can just double click on it and you'll see the acceptable value. So for instance, I was just mentioning the invoice source in the header. If I double click on that, you'll see that I get a form that opens up that shows me all of my different invoice sources. So maybe I want to set my source to API Wizard or some other source here. I can pick that right out of the LOV and enter it. Those LOVs are really helpful to ensure that you're entering your data accurately. You can avoid spelling mistakes and typos and things like that. Those LOVs are live, meaning that you're connected to your Oracle environment when you're working in API Wizard. So when you click on an LOV, you're seeing live information there. So if someone were to go in and enter a new invoice source, as soon as I double click on that LOV, I'll see it in my options. You see that there's a parameter for batch name. So when you're processing AP invoices in API Wizard, just like if you were processing them through the Oracle forms, you can enter your invoices in batches. And then when you're working in batches, you can see that we've got control total information here, also in the header, just to the right. And one of the nice things about the Excel user interface is that it makes it really simple for users. So for instance, here, the user would enter the control total, and then there are formulas that calculate the header and the lines total. So right now you can see they're all in balance, and we see a message that says total match equals true. But if I were to change the header amount, so let's say that I come into row 14, column G, and I change this to $436, so I'm off by $1, you'll see that I get I can see right away, clear visual that my data is out of sync. I've got a total match equals false. And because this is set up as a pre-validation in API Wizard, I actually won't be able to process this data until I fix it. And so not only can you apply Oracle standard rules, but you can also add any additional rules that you want to help users ensure that their data is being entered as accurately as possible. API Wizard's objective is not just to help you load your data faster, but also to load your data more accurately. Okay, I'll go ahead and change that back. Now, there are 4 ways to get data into your API Wizard loader. Number 1, you can manually enter the data. And as you can see here, I've already prepared data in this loader. I entered these 4 invoices so that I could show them to you. When you're manually entering data, as I mentioned, you can use things like LOVs or list of values to ensure that you're entering your data correctly. Secondly, you can get data into your API Wizard loader by copying and pasting. If you've got data in another application or another Excel worksheet, you can simply copy and paste it right into your API Wizard loader and then process it into Oracle. Third, you can import data into your API Wizard loader. If you've got data, let's say, for instance, a supplier is sending you data in a text file format, comma separated or tab delimited, and you want to load that into your API Wizard loader, you can easily do that. And then the 4th way you can get data into your API Wizard loader is you can run what's called an integrated extraction report. That's part of the reporting engine of API Wizard that allows you to pull data right out of the Oracle EBS instance into your API Wizard loader. And that's really helpful when you're updating information. So for instance, using another example, let's say that I want to do supplier maintenance. Maybe I want to update address information or whatever the case may be. I don't need to type in all that information. I can just simply run an extract, pull out the suppliers that I'm interested in, and then make the change that I want and load that back with very minimal data entry or keystrokes. Okay, so let's run this so that we can get our first example done. When API Wizard functionality is available under the add-ins menu in Excel. So if you see here, add-ins is the last of the top row of menu items, and then underneath that is the API Wizard toolbar, which has the most commonly used API Wizard functionality. There's also a menu for API Wizard that has everything that's in the toolbar plus some additional options. There's a ton of functionality in API Wizard. I'm not going to cover probably 20% of it or 10% of it in today's session. There's a lot that you can do. There's a lot of automations and ways that you can really minimize your data entry, use of formulas, and so forth. For today's session, we won't get into a lot of that, but there's a lot of functionality here. Okay, once your data is prepared, no matter how you've done that, the next step would be to load it. We do that by clicking on the Execute API button on in the toolbar. When I click on that, you get a message that tells you what's about to happen. So you can see here that it says you're about to process 22 rows in the EBS DB01 environment. Do you want to continue? EBS DB01 environment is the name of the Oracle instance that you're connected to. So for you, it might be your prod instance or your dev instance or whatever your naming conventions are. Today, I'm going to be working in two different environments. One is called EBS DB01, and the other is going to be called Viz. So you'll see me bounce between them. I'm also going to show the login process when I switch and so forth. 22 records or 22 rows that are going to be processed. API Wizard will process any row that has a Y or a yes in the upload column, which is column A, up to the first blank value. So in this case, I'm processing 22 rows. I'm going to show examples where I process more or less data, depending on my example. When I say yes, this process is going to start. It's going to load this data in real time. For this first example, I'm going to be using what's called interactive mode of API Wizard. In interactive mode, API Wizard will process each row in real time as we watch. And so we'll see it kind of go row by row. If we were looking at the status column that I showed you on the right-hand side of the loader, we'll either see an S for success when the record's validated successfully, or an E for error if there's some data validation issue with the record. Additionally, as the rows are processed, successfully processed rows will be colored in blue, and any records that are in error will be colored in red. So we'll get a quick visual, so we'll see that happening in real time. And then at the bottom, where right now on the green status bar at the bottom of Excel, bottom left-hand corner, you can see that it says connected to EBS DB01. That is again, the environment I'm connected to. Once this process starts running, we use the Excel status bar to provide information about the execution. So the Excel status bar will display information including the record number that's being processed, the total number of records to be processed, the percent complete, the estimated time remaining, and a tally of success and error records so far. Since I'm only processing 22 records here, we're going to see them all on the screen, but you could imagine that if I was processing 200 records or 2,000 records or 200,000 records, then that status bar is handy because I can tab away from API Wizard. I can go do work in other applications, even in another Excel session if I want, and then I can just tab back here and see where the progress is at any point in time. Now, I mentioned that this is what's called interactive mode. There's another mode for API Wizard, which is bulk load mode, and that works a little bit differently. It doesn't show us line by line as it's processing. It actually takes all the data at one time, sends it to Oracle, and gets it all back. I'm going to show an example of that also. But for now, we're going to start with the interactive mode. I'm going to say yes, and we're going to let it process. So as you can see, the rows are turning blue. That means that the records are successfully validated and those invoices are being created. Now I have some records here that are going to error so that you can also see what happens when a record errors in API Wizard. And the nice thing about that, as we see the first record in error status, because the rows have turned red, the nice thing about it is that when a record errors, it doesn't stop the processing of the records after it. So even though we see that invoice 65993345 had something wrong with it, we can see that that did not stop us from successfully processing the invoice under it, which was CIC 4057. When the API Wizard process finishes, we get what's called the execution summary. The execution summary tells us what happened. So we can see here that there were 22 records processed, there were 17 successes, and there were 5 errors. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and say commit, and I'm going to save the successfully processed invoices. I clearly have an error here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll over to the right-hand side of my loader. I'm going to see that the status is E for error for these records. And then I'm going to see that there's a message here that says no matching supplier, supplier site code. So there's a problem with the supplier site code. The message is helpful. I know exactly where I need to look. I'm going to go to the supplier site code field, and I'm going to look and see, I've got an invalid site code. So XYZ is not a valid site code for banner products. I just put that in there so that we would have an error scenario. Okay, so now I need to know the correct site code so that I can process this invoice. I can use my LOV for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just double click on the first cell that has XYZ in it. And when I do that, it pops up an LOV. This LOV has parameters to it. So you can see that there's a parameter for supplier name, supplier number, and site code. Since I know the site code is the problem, I'm going to just put a wildcard in there. I'm going to say query, and then it'll bring back any sites for this supplier. There only happens to be one, which is the Hastings-use site code. I'm going to just click OK, and then it brings that data back into my API Wizard Loader for me. Now I'm going to just pull that down, and I'm good to go. So now I'm going to re-execute my record. So I'm going to click the execute button. You can see that by default, API Wizard expects that you want to process the rows that failed in the last execution. That is what I want to do, so that's perfect. I could rerun or run other records if I want by changing the upload column toggle, but here, this is what I want to do. So you're about to process 5 rows. I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to let that run. These now will run successfully because the site code's been fixed, and now I am done. 5 records processed, 5 successes. I say commit to save, and now I've loaded 4 invoices. So I'll point out a couple of things before we move on to another example. Number one is it's really simple to use. I just prepare my data. Once I get used to this loader, I can enter these invoices in no time at all. I can leverage copy and paste capability in Excel, so I don't need to type out a lot of things. I'm just copying and pasting to fill this data out quickly. For those of you who are familiar with AP invoices, you know that in Oracle, there's multiple forms. There's the header form, there's the line form, there's the distribution form. Kind of a pain to work in those forms, so this makes it much easier for me. Like any API Wizard loader, these loaders can be modified to work exactly the way that you want. So what I'm showing you is just one sort of simple version of an AP invoice loader. You can set up your AP invoice loaders to have as many fields as you want, as few fields as you want. You can change the order of the columns. So for instance, let's say that you want the supplier number ahead of the supplier name. Literally all you need to do is just drag the column in Excel and put it where you want it, and you can move these things all around. API Wizard can work with any ordering of the data that you please. You can add columns. So for instance, let's say that you enter flex fields when you're working with your AP invoices or any of your other processes. You can just add those flex field columns right into the loader, and that takes literally like a minute to add a whole bunch of new attributes. So any flex fields that you're working with, you can add. And then there may be other invoice attributes, for instance, in this example that you would want. Maybe you're entering project invoices, and so you want to have the project number, the task number, that type of thing. So you can do that as well. And in fact, I'll just show you an example here. just another AP invoice loader. It's very similar to the one that I showed you, but at the header level, it's got some additional fields, such as the goods received date, the invoice received date, the amount applicable to discount, the ship to location. It's got 3 flex fields, pay term and payment method. And then at the line level, you'll see that it also has some additional fields. We've got the line number and the accounting date. If you remember in the first example I showed you, there was just an amount field, but here we've got a quantity amount and extended amount. The original one I showed you had PO number and PO line number, but here we've got receipt number, receipt line number, item number. We've got serial numbers and model numbers, ship to locations at the line level. We've got, again, flex fields, and then we've got our project information. So project, task, expenditure type, expenditure item date, and so forth. So again, these loaders are incredibly flexible. That's one of the big benefits of API Wizard. It's not a hard-coded solution. It's a very easy to modify these loaders to work in an optimal way for you and your team. There's actually, a million different things you can do with it, but I'm gonna stop on AP invoices there and move on to the next example. If you have questions, by the way, please do enter those in the chat panel for the GoToMeeting chat panel, because my colleagues, I have a couple of people on the line that will try to answer your questions. I won't stop to look at them because I have too much to show you, but they'll try to answer whatever questions you've got. Okay, so I'm going to move on here and I'm going to show a quick supplier example. I'm not actually going to run this loader. I'm just going to explain something here. So this is a loader for working with your suppliers. In this particular loader, you can create new suppliers, you can update existing suppliers, you can create new supplier sites, you can update existing supplier sites, and you can add bank account information to your suppliers and supplier sites. And I'll walk you through the loader really quickly. These blue column headers are the supplier level. This is at the way that this is broken down is they sort of map to the tabs in the R12 supplier forms. So these are the fields you'd find, for instance, on the organization tab. And then if I scroll to the right here, these are the fields you'd find on the tax reporting tab. And then if I scroll further, these are fields that you'd find on the purchasing tab and the receiving tab and the invoice management tab. And these are all supplier level. Then if I come over to the green, this is our site level. So here you can see we've got the site code, we've got the address information. So you can see here you can enter a whole bunch of sites. You can enter the operating unit for the site, the address book contact information, including email information, what type of site it is, so the different flags, is it a purchasing site, a pay site, so forth, flex field information, tax and reporting information, purchasing information at the site level, invoice management information at the site level, payment detail information at the site level, and then banking details and bank account information. And then finally, there's more contact directory. And then we get to our output over here on the right-hand side, including our return status. So now this is a comprehensive loader that can basically let you do anything with suppliers. For those of you on this webinar who are not familiar with supplier entry, this might look like, hey, there's a lot going on here. If you were to look at the supplier forms in Oracle, they're an absolute nightmare. There are so many different tabs, and it's really confusing to know whether you're dealing with a supplier attribute or a site level attribute. It's really hard to work with. And so this process in API Wizard is a massive time saver for doing any kind of supplier entry and maintenance. It's like a billion times easier. One of the other things that I'll mention here that API Wizard does, I mentioned that not only is API Wizard getting your data in faster, but also more accurately. When you're working with a process like suppliers, which is master data, not only does it make it easier to enter your data, but we also have value added logic that allows you to get your data entered more accurately. So what do I mean by that? Let's say that you have naming conventions for your suppliers. Perhaps you want to enforce that they get entered in all capitals, which is fairly common. Or let's say that you want to exclude things like punctuation or suffixes like inc, which you see in row 22. In Oracle Forms, you need your users to to enter the data correctly. That is to say, if you want them entered in capitals, you need to tell your users, enter all this data in capitals. Don't put punctuation in. In API Wizard, we can actually do all that for you. So API Wizard can transform the data that the user enters, apply a set of formatting rules against it, and make sure that your data gets entered the way that you want. So in this case here, telephonic services could be transformed to be all uppercase. Consolidated suppliers would be transformed to be uppercase, and then we would remove the punctuation, the comma, and the period, and then we'd also remove the suffix inc. So API Wizard can take care of that for you, making your data more cleaner, and then consequently making everybody's life a lot easier. The other thing that API Wizard can do is it can also avoid duplicates. When you're working in Oracle Forms with whatever process you're doing, if there's an exact duplicate, so let's say there's an existing supplier with the exact same name, or there's a existing item with the same item number, or there's an existing customer with the same customer name, or whatever the case may be, in Oracle, if there's an exact duplicate, it will tell you, there's a duplicate supplier. But if you have just a slight variation of the name, so for instance, let's say that I'm trying to enter a supplier called Consolidated Suppliers, but I already have a supplier in my system called Consolidated Supplies, Oracle's not going to think that's different, not going to think that's the same supplier, because Consolidated Suppliers and Consolidated Supplies are different. They have, a couple different letters, and so Oracle sees them as totally different. But API Wizard employs what's called fuzzy logic to try to find supplier names or other master data information that's similar to what you're entering, and then it can raise a warning and say, hey, you've got a supplier called Consolidated Supplies. Is this a duplicate that you're entering here, or is this really truly a new supplier? Again, Oracle doesn't offer anything like that in any of the areas of Oracle, any of the modules. API Wizard, that's another value add that makes sure your data is entered more accurately, avoiding duplicates and bad data. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one more thing in payables, and then that's it. We're going to move on. I'm going to just quickly show you just another kind of API Wizard loader. The first two loaders that I've shown you were pretty comprehensive, AP invoices or the Supplier Loader, where I could create and update supplier sites and banks. This is the opposite. This is what we call a very granular loader. This is letting me do one specific thing. So let's say that I'm doing a cleanup project. Maybe I want to make sure that all of my suppliers have emails associated with their accounts. I can use API Wizard to do that. And so here I'm going to do my first example of extracting data from the system. So I'm going to go to the API Wizard toolbar. I'm going to choose the integrated report option. This opens up the API Wizard reporting. And I have an extraction report here that's going to bring back data into this loader. And so I can pick a particular vendor name or site code or operating unit. And I can also say, all right, do I want suppliers only where there's no email, or do I want to bring back everybody? So I might say, okay, show me everybody where there's no email. And then I run the report. It's going to bring back 1,453 records. I say, okay. And then it brings that data back for me. And you can see here that it brought back a whole bunch of records, all the suppliers that I don't have email for. So then I could, if my job was to try to get all these emails, I can work this list. I can load the ones that I want. I can rerun this process to pull out, let's say I come back tomorrow and I've entered 50 today. I found those emails and I loaded them. Tomorrow I can come back and pull this list of, the ones that I still have to go, which is pretty neat. Now I could also run this list by leaving the option here to blank only to no, in which case it'll bring back everybody, including the suppliers that have email addresses. So now you can see that if I do it that way, I can see some of these guys where the email address has already been added. So again, API Wizard gives you flexibility in the loaders to be either comprehensive, where you can do a lot of different things for a process, or be very granular, where you do a specific thing for a process. This is nice because, again, you can give this to a lower level user that you don't want to perhaps be making other types of changes to the supplier, only the email. Then you've got a additional level of control here. Okay, so that's it. I'm done with them, with suppliers. Let me move on to fixed assets. And so before I do this, I'm just going to go to my slides here real quick and say, okay, we talked about accounts payable. Now I'm going to show you one example in fixed assets. There's a lot of things that you can do in fixed assets. You can do additions, mass additions, adjustments, transfers, retirements, reinstatements, unplanned depreciation, and project assets. I'm not going to show all those because then that would take up the rest of the day here. But what I am going to do is take a look at asset adjustments, just one example. So here I'm going to just clear out the existing row. I'm going to run my extraction report. So you saw me do this with the emails. I'm going to do this again for my assets. And so I can make an asset adjustment. I'm going to say, show me all my assets in my IT Corp book. I'm going to run it, and then it brings those assets back into the loader for me. So in this particular loader, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. You can see that I've got the book number and the asset number. I've got the asset category. I've got the description, the tag number, the serial number, asset key information, asset type, model, so on and so forth. Those are all descriptive elements of the asset. And then over here, I've got the cost information. I've got the current cost. And then if I want to change the cost, I can put a new cost value here. I can change the salvage value, the depreciation information, and so forth. So I can make all those changes here in my asset adjustment loader. So I'm going to just make a simple change. I'm going to just update these tag numbers. And so I'm going to just put in a new tag number for some of these guys. And I'll just paste that down. And let's say I'll go down to the last one that has a tag. So I'm going to do 28 records. Again, when we process API Wizard, we just put a Y or yes in any of the records that we're processing up to the first blank value. So API Wizard is going to stop after row 36. Now, I told you that there were two modes that you can run API Wizard in. There's actually three, but I'm not going to get into the third one today. So the first was the interactive mode, which you saw, process it row by row. Then we also have what's called the bulk load, which processes all the data in one shot. That's really helpful when you're doing larger loads. So for instance, if you're doing loads with hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of records, I'm going to just do it with 28. It doesn't make that much of a difference with a small number, but you'll see that it just works a little bit differently. So I'm going to say yes. And what it does is it brings up this processing summary form. It sent all the data to Oracle in one shot, and it brings them all back in one shot. So you can see here that it tells me that it spent 7 seconds processing this data. It processed 28 records. There were 28 successes. There were no errors. And then I'm going to just say commit to save. And so basically what it did is it just changed these tag numbers all in one shot rather than row by row, as I showed you. One of the things that's cool with API Wizard is that after you've processed data, if you want to look at it, see the changes that you've made, you can just clear the data right from your loader. Actually, let me go all the way down. You can clear the data from your loader and you can just re-extract. So if I just come back here and I run my same extraction, so any asset in my IT Corp book, you can see here, all right, well, now these are the guys that we've updated because I changed those tag numbers to 4,000 or 40,000 and change. A couple of things that I'll point out here before I move to the next set of examples. When you update information or create information and data in Oracle, the standard API, the standard Oracle who columns get updated. So those are the created by, creation date, last updated by, last update date. The same who information that you would see in Oracle Forms if you went to about record history. So everything that you do in API Wizard is tagged with the logged in user's information. So you log into API Wizard with your Oracle EBS credentials, that is your EBS username, your EBS password, or if you're using single sign-on, your single sign-on credentials. And so we know who you are, and so everything that's done is tagged with your user, just as if you were doing it through the Oracle Forms. So you have that same audit history. Okay, Now, there's a lot of other asset loaders. I'm not gonna show them all because it would just take too much time. But like this is just an example of an asset transfer loader, and you can transfer loaders between. You can transfer assets between employees, expense accounts, and locations. You can do asset retirements, and so on and so forth. So again, I'm not going to show all of these because there isn't time, but there's a lot that you can do in fixed assets. Okay, so now I'm going to move over to purchasing. So things that you can do in the purchasing module. Again, and the point of today's session isn't really to do all the functional modules. There's no way I could go through them all. I'm just trying to show a range of different modules and different API Wizard functionality. So here in the purchasing area, we can do things like purchase orders, blanket POs, quotes, requisitions, approved supplier lists or ASLs, sourcing rules, receiving, returns, catalogs, and RFQ responses. So here, if I just pull up a couple of these to show you, so this would be a purchase order loader. Purchase order loaders are interesting because there's 4 levels to a purchase order. There's the purchase order header, the purchase order lines, the purchase order shipments, and then the line shipments, and then the distributions. So here you can see that I kind of similar to the AP invoice example that I showed, where I'm just breaking this out so you can kind of see the different POs. You don't need to put these breaks in. It just makes it easier for me to show this to you. This is the purchase order header. And then if I scroll over, this is the purchase order line. And then if I scroll a little bit further, this is the shipment information. And then finally, the distribution information. And you can have, every purchase order can have as many lines as needed, hundreds, thousands, whatever it is. Every line can have multiple shipments, and every line shipment combination can have multiple distributions. So you have a one-to-many relationship for all of those levels. Requisitions. So I can easily load my requisitions in API Wizard. Again, piece of cake. I can do things like the approved supplier lists. So here what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to quickly show you this one. I'm going to clear this. I'm going to use my extraction report again to pull out some existing ASL records. I'm going to just say, let me pull everything in my Boston org. You'll see that it brings that data into my loader. And here I've got my ASL information and my ASL attributes. I won't run this, but just to see I can easily bring back my data. And then I've got sourcing rules. So same thing, I'm going to just clear this data here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit to make it easier to see. I'm going to come run my integrated report. I'm going to say, show me everything in my ASAT assignment group. I'm going to run that, and then I can see all of my different assignments, and then I can either update with the existing ones. I can update or delete, or I can create new ones. So again, ton of stuff that I can do in the purchasing area using API Wizard. All right, so now I'm going to switch gears and move over to some BOM examples. Let me close a few of these windows here before I get myself confused. Okay, so now we're going to show BOMs. Things that you can do in BOMs, you can create and update BOMs, routings, resource codes, roll-ups, and so forth. So let me pull my BOM example here. And I have 2 BOM loaders that I'm going to show you. I've got what I'm going to call my simple loader, which has just some basic information. And then I'm going to bring up what I call the full loader, which has the same information as the simple loader, plus it's just got a whole lot of other information. And again, the nice thing about API Wizard is that whether you need the simple loader or whether you need the comprehensive loader or whether you need something in between, that's really simple because all these loaders are configurable without any programming or any complex requirements. Literally, you can just, if I don't want the basis description field on my loader, I can literally just delete and remove it. It's really that simple. Okay, so what I'm going to do here before running is I'm actually going to show you how you log into API Wizard. So to log into API Wizard, you log in using the login option. I'll just first log out, and then I'm going to log in. So when you log into API Wizard, you're entering your Oracle EBS user, and I'm going to enter my password. I shouldn't talk and enter my password at the same time because I'm going to get a typo. And then the name of the instance I'm connected to or connecting to. And then I hit the login option. It authenticates me. At that point, I can pick one of my responsibilities, and then I log into API Wizard. When you're working with BOMs, this is another good example of why API Wizard is so much easier than working with Oracle Forms. For those folks who are familiar with BOM entry, and we see this a lot with all of these different processes, Oracle either lets you work with one record at a time or with a very small number of records at a time. So when you're working in BOMs, there's the BOM form has the header information in the top half of the form. So the header information is the BOM name and number and so forth, the date created and things like that, the assembly type and so forth. Then the bottom half of the form are the components of the BOM. So and there's basically like a grid form at the bottom that shows you 7 components, and that's it. In the real world, BOMs may have tens or hundreds of components, and you've got to try to look through or work with 100 components 7 at a time, which is nearly impossible. And so everybody that works with BOMs is killing themselves. In API Wizard, it makes it so much easier because Excel is a very natural interface for dealing with more than 7 or 10 records. We can work with any number of records very easily here. Okay, so I can use this loader to create new BOMs or to update existing BOMs. I'm going to just pull out existing BOM. Right now, you can see that it's got some defaulted information, so it's going to pull out my BOM where the assembly item is ASO. I'm going to just run that as is. And you'll see that it brought back, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, 2 BOMs, ASO 0020 and 21. So these are the 2 BOMs that start with ASO. You see that I've actually got extraction parameters in the header here. So I can now I can create a new BOM if I want to. I can just change some information and create a new BOM, or I can update this existing BOM. So I'm going to just update ASO 0021 or 20. I'm going to update the components. I'll just pull that down. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to you see the components are in reverse alphabetical order. I'm going to just make a real simple little change, and I'm going to put these in alphabetical order. So I'm going to just say 10, 20. I'm coming into the item sequence. And you may never want to do this, but just it's a real simple and quick thing that I can show you. So, whoops, I didn't realize I was not on the first row. So let me just pull that up. Okay. And so now all I'm going to do is just reverse the order so that my first component will start with A rather than W. I'm going to go ahead and say execute. In API Wizard, I'll process anything with a Y or yes up to the first blank value. If I want to stop, so I'm only processing the BOM that ends in 20, I just put my blank there. I say execute. You're about to process 13 rows. I say yes, and then it runs. If you were trying to do something even this simple, just reordering your BOM when you've got a BOM that's got 13 lines and you can only see 7 at a time, it's so hard. But in API Wizard, we can do that really easily. All right, so everything was successful. You can see that. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to just clear out my data. And then I'm going to re-extract. So I'm going to go back to my integrated report. I'm going to hit filter, same information. I'll say run. And now you can see that it's reordered the BOM starting with AS. And so this is the BOM that I changed, the one that ends in 20. So again, I can make those kind of changes, anything I want really simply and easily. If I go to the bigger BOM loader, so this is the more comprehensive one, I can pull out the same data. And so you can see here that this is the same BOM, 020. This is the order. Let me zoom in a little bit. The component names. But then here's all the other information. So again, when you are in the more comprehensive loader and you do an extraction, it pulls out all the detailed information. If you're in a simpler loader, it just pulls out the relevant information. Okay, let's move along because time is winding down, believe it or not. Inventory. There's a ton of stuff that you can do in inventory. I can't even read all of this, but I mean, you can create and update items, item categories, item costing, item cross-references, physical inventory information. There's just a ton. There's actually 2 slides for this. You can do stock locators, material transactions, just the whole, there's so much you can do in inventory. I will bring up just a quick example. I won't run it, but here's an example of a loader for creating or updating inventory items. If you work with inventory, there's like 10 different tabs in the bottom half of the inventory form. So you enter like 10 things on one tab and 2 things on another tab and 1 thing on a 3rd tab and maybe nothing on the 4th tab and 5 things on the 5th tab. It's crazy. It's so hard to keep track of. In API Wizard, again, all of that's just in one simple, nice Excel worksheet. Makes it really simple and easy. You can compare items and how they're set up. It's just a whole different ballgame. They work with templates. So you can see here that in this loader that I've opened, I've got template names, so I can work with templates as well. I'm going to show you one thing I really like, physical inventories. A lot of companies, oh, sorry, I got to switch environments for this process, so let me do that real quick. I said I was going to bounce between them. So here I go. Let's see if I can enter my credentials quickly. Okay. So if I were to say, pull back all of the physical inventory that for this particular physical inventory name, and I say run, I can see there's going to bring back 1,000 records, and you can see that some of them have counts and some of them don't. I can enter my counts in this loader. That's basically what I can do here. A lot of people have scanners for doing inventory counts when you're in the warehouse. That's great. But here's one thing that's really nice is that I have an approval loader. So with the approval loader, I can actually, as the approver of the counts, I can come in here to my extraction report and I can say, okay, show me, for instance, for this particular physical inventory, show me all of my unapproved counts. So instead of showing me the whole, however many items were in that physical inventory, let's say there were 1,000, rather than showing me all 1,000, maybe I just want to see the unapproved ones that have been counted. So when I run that, I can see here that there's just 5, there have been 5 counted by Pat Stock, and I've not approved them yet, or I haven't done the approval. So this gives me a really nice way that at any point in time, while the physical inventory is going on, I can quickly pull up, see the progress, see what's been counted, see what I've approved, what I haven't approved. I can do the approvals on a rolling basis or all at the end. But again, API Wizard makes this so much easier than if you were doing the same process in Oracle Forms. All right, HR. So let's see here. I gotta go even faster. HR. There's a ton of stuff you can do in HR: employees, salaries, elements, terminations, everything. Here's a assignment loader, and it's just got, there's just a ton of information that you can do, who the employee is, who their supervisor is, and so forth. There's a granular loaders for things like employee locations. I'm not going to run. I'm going to go even faster now. Sales orders. Oh, so accounts receivable. I'm not showing this today, but in accounts receivable, you can do things like customers, invoices, adjustments, credit memos, receipt application. So there's a ton that you can do there. Orders. You can do sales orders, blanket sales orders, returns and RMAs, price lists, price list modifiers, and so forth. And there's more general ledger. I'm running out of time. I'm going to show one more thing before I go in the last 1 minute that I've got. API Wizard has an absolute ton of functionality. You've seen a whole bunch of examples for doing data entry and updating. You can also do reporting in API Wizard. Sadly, there's only a minute to show it to you, but basically I'm going to just quickly show you. Let's say that I wanted to do, I didn't show AR, so I'm going to do a summary aging of my AR invoices. That's important to a lot of organizations because that's money that you're waiting to receive. So here I've got a loader that just runs the list of customers and their outstanding AR balances. So you can see I've got some guys who owe me a lot of money here. If I want to drill in to see details, let's say Hillman and Associates owes me $272 million. I can double click and it opens up a new report, an invoice summary report that shows all of the individual invoices, just trying to make it bigger so you can see better. shows me all the individual invoices. If I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that it's 272 million, which matched the first report. I can do things like put parameters on the worksheet. So for instance, if I want to just toggle around different customers, let's say I want to see general technologies in this report, I can just come in here and I can say, okay, take the customer name parameter, use the value that's in C2, and just got to get rid of that little thing here, C2. And now when I run the report, it'll bring back general technologies. If I want to see Hillman and Associates again, I just put in Hillman in a wildcard, I double click to refresh the report, and now I see Hillman. If I want to drill down on a particular invoice, let's say invoice 100376163 is $460,000, I can double click and it actually brings up the invoice detail. You can see the total here, and then all of the line items and the tax that makes up the invoice. I can also run it wide open if I want to see every open invoice in my system. So you can see that I've got customers like AC Networks, ABC Application Software, AT&T, and so forth. And then the very last thing, and this is the last thing I'll show you today, is that I can also leverage API Wizard reporting in other sheets in Excel. So for instance, if I wanted to create a quick pivot table showing my customers and the amount that's remaining, I can do that here. So basically this just took my API Wizard data and I have, I'm gonna just put a comma in because I can never read these numbers without a comma. I can now see the each individual customer and the amount due remaining, but then I can add things like sales rep. So maybe I want to see broken down by sales rep, or maybe I want to see the sales rep broken down by customer. Maybe I want to add other information, and I can do all those things. We've built integration into Excel's pivot tables, charts, and reports so that you can build out whatever you want. And then when your Oracle data changes, you simply refresh your API Wizard report, and everything that you've built upon it, any pivot tables, any charts, any graphs, automatically refresh. And so you don't need to rebuild them. You don't have to worry about stale data. It's literally just as simple as either going to that report and double clicking it, or from the toolbar, just clicking the refresh reports button, and that'll automatically refresh your reports for you, and you'll have the latest, greatest information in real time. Okay, hours not enough to show you everything that there is in API Wizard. It's an awesome tool, makes your EBS life a zillion times easier. Thank you for letting me show this to you. I'm gonna turn it back to my colleagues now.
Thanks, Rob. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. If any outstanding questions come up after the session, please reach out. Or if you'd like to set up a follow-up session tailored around your specific areas of interest or requirements, please let me know. And we're also happy to arrange a free trial for you to test in your own environment. With that, thank you again for joining the webinar, and this will conclude the webinar. Thank you.